She was a waitress serving wine, while 100 princesses lined up to offer their blood to the immortal vampire king. One clumsy moment, her blood spilled on the marble floor, glowing gold like liquid sunlight. The king, who had dismissed royalty all night, fell to his knees before a servant girl, whispering that her blood could save or destroy them all, and he would never let her leave. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. Mira had never seen so much silk in one room. She pressed her back against the cold stone wall of the obsidian castle's great hall, balancing a silver tray that probably cost more than her entire village. Around her, 100 princesses glittered like stars. Emerald gowns from the eastern kingdoms, sapphire veils from the desert courts, ruby jewels from the mountain clans, each one more beautiful than the last, and each one terrified. "Refill the goblets. Don't make eye contact. Don't trip," Mira whispered to herself, repeating the instructions the head servant had barked at her 3 hours ago. She was only here because the tavern owner in Vale Haven owed someone a favor. 1 night of work, he'd promised. Easy money. He'd failed to mention she'd be serving wine to vampires. The blood-red moon hung fat and swollen through the massive arched windows, casting everything in crimson light. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from black glass, sat King Darius Vin. Mira had heard the stories. Everyone had. The immortal king who'd ruled for 3 centuries. The monster who'd ended the Great War by drinking the blood of 1,000 soldiers in a single night. The creature who'd signed the peace treaty in his own venom, binding humans and vampires in an uneasy truce that required this ceremony every 50 years. But the stories never mentioned how human he looked. Darius wore simple black, no crown, no jewels. His dark hair fell across sharp cheekbones, and his eyes, even from this distance, glowed like dying embers. He looked bored, tired even, as if watching princesses line up to offer their blood was the dullest thing in the world. "The ceremony will now begin," announced Lord Kane, the king's advisor. His voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "By the covenant of red twilight, the noble houses offer their purest blood to sustain our king and ensure peace for another generation." The first princess stepped forward, a girl with golden hair and a crown of white roses. She held out her wrist with a trembling hand. Darius barely looked at her. He pricked her skin with one sharp nail, let a single drop of blood fall into a crystal chalice, then waved her away. Next, the second princess fared no better. Then the third. The fourth. Mira lost count around Princess 27. Each one the same. Offered blood, dismissed, sent away looking crushed. Some of the nobles whispered that the king hadn't found a true match in over a century, that he survived on royal blood out of duty, not desire. "You, waitress!" A sharp voice made Mira jump. Lady Sarah, a princess from the Northern Highlands, snapped her fingers at Mira. "My goblet is empty. Fill it now." Mira hurried over, hands shaking as she poured dark wine from her pitcher. The princess's eyes were ice cold, her lips painted blood red. She looked at Mira the way someone might look at a bug on their shoe. "Clumsy peasant," Sarah muttered as Mira stepped back, but Mira's foot caught on the hem of another princess's gown. She stumbled forward, and the crystal goblet Sarah had just set down toppled off the table. It shattered against the marble floor. The sound cut through the hall like a blade. Everything stopped. 100 pairs of eyes turned toward Mira. She dropped to her knees immediately, frantically gathering the broken shards with her bare hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," she gasped, her face burning with shame. "I'll clean it up." Pain, sharp and sudden. A crystal shard had sliced deep into her palm. Blood welled up, bright red, and dripped onto the white marble. That's when it happened. Every vampire in the room went utterly still, not the stillness of surprise, the stillness of predators catching a scent. At the throne, Darius's head snapped up. His crimson eyes locked onto Mira, and the look on his face made her blood freeze. It wasn't hunger. It wasn't curiosity. It was shock. He rose from his throne in one fluid motion, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Princesses stepped back. Guards tensed. Even Lord Kane looked confused. Darius crossed the hall, Not with the casual boredom he'd shown all night, but with purpose. His footsteps echoed. Slow. Deliberate. He stopped 3 feet away from where Mira knelt, blood still dripping from her hand. Stand, he commanded, his voice low and rough. Mira's legs barely obeyed. She stood wobbling, her injured hand clutched against her chest. Up close, the king was even more intimidating. Tall, powerful, ancient. His eyes weren't just red. They were burning. Your name, he said. Mimira, your majesty. I'm just a waitress. I didn't mean to. Let me see your hand. It wasn't a request. Mira extended her trembling hand. Blood pooled in her palm, spilling over her fingers. The cut was deeper than she'd thought. Darius stared at it. Then, slowly, impossibly, he knelt. The king of all vampires knelt before a tavern waitress. Gasps erupted across the hall. Princesses stumbled backward. Guards drew weapons halfway before freezing, unsure who the threat was. Sire! Lord Cain rushed forward. What are you— Silence. Darius didn't look away from Mira's hand. He reached out, not to take her blood, but to study her wrist, gently, as if she were made of glass. His fingers were cold against her skin. Who are you? He whispered. And for the first time all night, there was something other than boredom in his voice. There was fear. I don't understand, Mira breathed. Darius finally looked up at her, and she saw it clearly now. The shock, the confusion, the terrible, desperate hunger in his eyes. Not the hunger of a predator. The hunger of someone who'd been starving for centuries and just found water. Your blood, he said quietly, so only she could hear. It sings. Before Mira could ask what that meant, Lady Sarah's shrill voice cut through the moment. She's bewitched him. The servant has used dark magic. The hall erupted into chaos. Nobles shouted. Vampires hissed. Princess after princess began accusing Mira of witchcraft, of trickery, of ruining the sacred ceremony. Their voices overlapped in a cacophony of rage and fear, but Darius didn't move. He stayed kneeling, his hand still wrapped gently around her bleeding wrist, his eyes locked on hers. You're not leaving this castle, he said. Mira couldn't tell if it was a threat or a promise. Finally, Darius rose to his full height, still holding her hand as if afraid she might vanish. He turned to face the hall, and his voice rang out with the authority of 3 centuries of rule. Lock her in the moon chamber. No one touches her. No one speaks to her. His voice dropped to something dangerous. And someone explained to me how a waitress from Vale Haven carries blood that hasn't been seen in 300 years. 2 guards seized Mira's arms before she could protest. They dragged her toward the massive doors, and she looked back once. Darius stood motionless in the center of the hall, 100 princesses forgotten around him, staring at the drops of her blood on the marble floor as if they were the answer to a question he'd stopped asking long ago. The moon chamber was beautiful, in the way a cage was beautiful. Silver moonlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating white marble walls etched with ancient symbols Mira couldn't read. A 4-poster bed draped in black silk dominated the room. Fresh roses sat in a crystal vase. It looked like a room meant for royalty, but the door had locked from the outside. Mira paced, her bandaged hand throbbing. A servant had come, silent, terrified, and wrapped the wound before fleeing without meeting her eyes. That had been an hour ago. Maybe 2. Time felt strange here. She pressed her forehead against the cold window glass, staring down at the courtyard 3 stories below. Too high to jump. Not that she'd survive the vampire guards patrolling the grounds anyway. What did he mean? She whispered to her reflection. Blood that sings. Her mother had been a seamstress. Her father, a farmer who died when she was 8. She was nobody. She'd grown up scrubbing tavern floors and serving drunk merchants. There was nothing special about her blood. Nothing special about her at all. Except the king had knelt. A knock at the door made her spin around. Hello? Her voice cracked. The door opened, but instead of guards, a woman glided in. She wore midnight blue robes embroidered with silver stars. A court scholar, Mira guessed. Her face was kind, but her eyes held warning. "You shouldn't be alive," the woman said without preamble. Mira's heart hammered. "Are you here to kill me?" "No, child. I'm here to tell you why everyone else wants to." The scholar closed the door softly behind her. "My name is Alara. I've served this court for 40 years, and I've never seen the king react like that to anyone's blood. Do you know what you are? A waitress. A mystery." Alara moved to the window, her expression grave. In the old texts, there are stories of blood that carries memory. Bloodlines so ancient they remember things even the carriers have forgotten. The king's reaction suggests he recognized something in your scent. Something impossible. I don't understand. Neither do I. But understand this. Half the court thinks you've cursed him. The other half thinks you're a weapon sent to destroy him. Princess Sarah is already spreading rumors that you're a spy from the Hunter clans. Mira's blood went cold. Hunter clans? Those are just stories. They died out centuries ago. Did they? Alara's gaze was sharp. Tell me, do you know anything about your grandparents? Your mother's family? My mother never talked about them. She said they died before I was born. Convenient. Alara pulled a small vial from her robes. Inside was a single drop of dried blood, black as ink. This is what royal blood looks like to vampires. Dark, rich, sustaining. But your blood, child, when it hit that marble floor. She paused. It glowed. Mira stared at the vial. That's impossible. I watched it happen. So did everyone else. For 3 seconds, your blood shimmered gold before turning red. Do you know what that means? No. Neither do I. But the king does. And that terrifies me more than anything else tonight. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Alara tensed, pressing the vial into Mira's hand. Hide this. Trust no one. And whatever you do, don't let them draw more of your blood until we know what you are. She was gone before Mira could respond, slipping out as silently as she'd arrived. Mira barely had time to hide the vial under the mattress before the door opened again. This time, it was him. Darius filled the doorway, his presence suffocating. He'd removed his formal jacket, now just in a black shirt with sleeves rolled up. He looked less like a king and more like a man who hadn't slept in days. You should be resting, he said, his voice softer than it had been in the hall. You locked me in here. I kept you alive. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Do you have any idea what you've done? 83 princesses left the castle tonight. The remaining 17 are demanding your execution. 2 noble houses have already threatened to break the treaty if I don't kill you by sunrise. Then kill me. The words surprised even her. I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask for any of this. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. I can't, he admitted, and the rawness in his voice made her breath catch. Your blood. He stopped, as if the words physically hurt. For 300 years I've survived on duty. Royal blood sustains me, but it's like eating ash. It keeps me alive, but it doesn't. He paused. It doesn't feed me. Do you understand? Mira shook her head. Darius moved closer, and she saw the exhaustion etched into his face. I am starving, Mira. I have been for centuries, and tonight, for the first time since I took this throne, I smelled something that made me feel hungry instead of hollow. He stopped 3 feet away, maintaining distance as if afraid to get closer. I won't take your blood, he said quietly, but I need to know what you are. Because whatever's in your veins, it's either going to save me or destroy everything I've built. Mira's hand went to her bandaged palm. Alara said my blood glowed gold. Darius's jaw tightened. It did. What does that mean? He moved to the window, staring out at the blood-red moon hanging over the castle. For a long moment, he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. It means you might be the last living descendant of the only woman who ever came close to killing me. Before Mira could process that, screams erupted from somewhere in the castle. Then the sound of breaking glass, shouting, metal clashing. Darius's head snapped toward the door, his fangs sliding out instantly. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me. He was gone in a blur of shadow. Mira stood frozen in the empty room, her heart pounding against her ribs. The sounds of chaos grew louder. Voices raised in anger, the clash of steel against steel. Through the window, she saw figures moving in the courtyard below. Torches. Weapons. The mob had come for her, and she was 3 stories up with nowhere to run. The chaos lasted 20 minutes before falling into an eerie silence. Mira pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear anything beyond her own thundering heartbeat. No more screams. No more clashing steel. Just nothing. Then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, multiple sets. The door unlocked. Darius strode in, and this time he wasn't alone. A massive vampire in military armor followed, scarred face, cold eyes, a sword that had clearly seen centuries of battle. "General Theron," Darius said without looking at the man. "Tell her what you told me." The general's gaze swept over Mira with obvious disdain. The old prophecy, written in blood on the throne room floor by the witch who cursed our kind 400 years ago. His voice was gravel and iron. "When shadow and gold meet without fear, the curse shall break, or the kingdom disappear." "I don't understand," Mira whispered. "Shadow and gold." Darius moved to the window, staring out at the same darkness where Princess Sarah had vanished earlier that night. "Vampire blood runs red as shadow. Yours runs gold in the light. The prophecy has 2 endings," Theron continued, his hand resting on his sword hilt. "Either the curse breaks and both species find peace, or everything ends. The kingdom, the treaty. All of it." Mira's throat went dry. "Which one happens?" "That depends," Darius said quietly, turning to face her. "On whether we meet with fear or without it." He took a step closer, and the weight in his crimson eyes made her chest tighten. "The curse isn't just killing me, Mira. It's spreading." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing his forearm. In the dim light, dark veins spread beneath his pale skin like cracks in porcelain. They pulsed with a sickly black light. "Every full moon, the darkness in my blood grows stronger. In 50 years, maybe less, every vampire will become what humans fear most. Mindless, savage, uncontrollable." Mira stared at the corruption spreading through him. "How long do you have?" 3 more full moons. Maybe 4. His voice was matter of fact, but she heard the fear beneath. "When it reaches my brain, I'll become exactly what the stories say. Mindless hunger with no control. And because I'm the oldest, the source, every vampire alive will follow." He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. "The curse doesn't just kill me. It ends our entire species. Then why haven't you looked for a cure before?" "I tried." Darius sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking ancient. "For 300 years I tried everything. Blood magic, witch curses, human science. Nothing worked. The curse is tied to the original sin, my ancestors' betrayal of the first peace treaty. Only blood that remembers both sides can break it. My blood. Your choice." He looked up at her, crimson eyes reflecting the golden symbols still faintly visible on the walls from her earlier bleeding. "The prophecy says when red and gold meet without fear, your blood runs gold, mine runs red as shadow. But meeting without fear, that's the part no one can force." The weight of his words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. "What if I'm afraid?" Mira asked. "Then we all die," he said simply. "But if you're brave enough to try, there might be a chance." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibilities and impossible choices. Outside, the blood-red moon began to set, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Somewhere in the castle, enemies were plotting. Somewhere beyond the walls, armies were gathering. But in this room, a vampire king and a waitress who was so much more stood facing each other across an impossible gulf. "Teach me," Mira said finally. "If my blood can do what you saw, if it can glow and change, then teach me how to control it. I can't make this choice if I don't understand what I am." For the first time since she'd met him, Darius smiled. It was sad, tired, but genuine. "Then we start tonight." The attack came at dawn. Mira woke to the sound of explosions rocking the castle walls. The windows of the moon chamber shattered inward, spraying glass across the marble floor. She threw herself behind the bed as smoke billowed through the opening. Through the haze, she saw them. Human soldiers storming the courtyard below. Dozens of them with crossbows, torches, and silver weapons gleaming in the early light. The door burst open. General Theron stood there, bloodied and furious. They're breaching the east wing. Someone told them about the girl. Darius appeared behind him, his eyes blazing with fury. But when he looked at Mira, trapped between vampire defenders and human invaders, his expression shifted to something that looked almost like regret. "Get her to safety," he ordered Theron. "If they take her, this war begins tonight." More explosions. Guards poured in, shouting about fires spreading through the castle. In the chaos, no one noticed the figure slipping through the shattered window with inhuman grace. Princess Sarah. She landed silently, her ice-blue eyes finding Mira immediately. "Come with me." "Now. Why would I trust you?" Mira backed away. "Because in about 30 seconds, this room will be swarming with human soldiers who will kill you on sight, thinking you're a vampire's prisoner." Sarah grabbed her arm. "I know a way out. Through the catacombs." Darius had vanished to the front lines. Theron was coordinating defenses at the door. The castle was burning. Mira made a choice. She followed Sarah through the window, climbing down the outer wall using handholds that seemed impossibly small. Sarah moved like a spider, graceful and sure. Mira's hands shook, but fear gave her strength. They dropped into a forgotten courtyard, and Sarah pulled open a rusted grate hidden beneath overgrown vines. "The old passages. They'll take you to the forest border. You're helping me escape?" Sarah's smile was cold. "I'm helping myself. Your death will destroy Darius more thoroughly than any army. Go." She pressed a folded map into Mira's hand. "Follow this exactly. Don't deviate." Mira descended into darkness. The passages were narrow, ancient, smelling of earth and decay. She used the map by feel, her fingers tracing the path Sarah had marked. Down, east, then north through what the map labeled as warrior tombs. After what felt like hours, the passage opened into a larger chamber. Faint light filtered from gaps in the ceiling, revealing rows of stone alcoves. The catacombs. Skeletal remains of ancient vampires lined the walls, their bones gleaming white, weapons crossed over their chests. Mira consulted the map. The exit should be east, beyond the burial chambers. She just had to. A sword tip pressed against her throat from behind. "Going somewhere, girl?" Mira froze. A guard, northern accent, one of Sarah's people. "Lady Sarah said you'd come this way." He continued, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "She's smarter than she looks, that one. Gave you a map straight into our trap." 2 more guards emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn, all wearing northern house colors. Mira's stomach dropped. "She betrayed me. She used you." The guard smiled, fangs catching the light. "With you dead, the king will spiral into grief. The treaty will break. And the northern houses will finally get the war they've wanted for a century. Nothing personal, peasant." The sword pressed harder against her throat. Mira squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. It didn't come. Instead, there was a sound like thunder and stone breaking. The guard's sword clattered to the ground. When Mira opened her eyes, all 3 guards were pressed against the far wall, held there by an invisible force that made the air itself shimmer. Darius stood at the tunnel entrance, his hand outstretched, his eyes blazing pure crimson. "Touch her again," he said softly, "and I'll bury you so deep even death won't find you." He clenched his fist. The 3 guards dropped to the ground, unconscious. Mira's legs gave out. She sat hard on the cold stone, shaking uncontrollably. Darius was beside her in an instant, his cold hands cupping her face, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "Sarah set me up. She wanted them to kill me." "I know." His jaw clenched with barely controlled rage. "I caught one of her messengers. She's been playing both sides." He pulled back, studying her face. "Why didn't you call for me?" "I didn't know if I could trust you." Something flickered in his eyes. "Pain, maybe." "Fair enough." He stood, helping her up gently. "But we need to talk. Now." He led her deeper into the catacombs, to a chamber that looked different from the rest. The walls were carved with symbols that glowed faintly gold, the same color as her blood. "This is where the first treaty was signed," Darius said quietly. Built by the human king Marcus and the vampire queen Elise 300 years ago. He paused. King Marcus's blood is what sealed the treaty. And the vampire who nearly killed me, Kira Valera, she was the queen's assassin, sent to end me before peace could be signed. Mira's heart pounded. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you are. Darius moved toward her. When I smelled your blood, I recognized both scents. Marcus's bloodline, noble, royal, the foundation of peace, and Valera's blood, poisonous to vampires, designed to kill us. He met her eyes. You're the daughter of two erased bloodlines, Mira. You're both cure and poison, and that makes you the most dangerous person in this castle. They stayed in the shrine for 3 days. Above them, the battle had ended. Darius's forces had repelled the human attackers, but the damage was done. 7 vampire nobles dead. 2 human battalions decimated. The fragile peace was cracking like ice under a hammer. But in the hidden chamber beneath the castle, time moved differently. Focus, Darius said, watching as Mira held her bleeding palm over a basin of water. Feel the energy in your blood. Don't fight it. Guide it. Mira gritted her teeth. Her hand throbbed where she'd reopened the wound at his instruction. A single drop of blood fell into the clear water. Golden light erupted. It spread through the basin like liquid sunrise, illuminating the dark chamber with warmth that shouldn't exist in a vampire's tomb. But there was something else too. Dark tendrils that moved through the gold like smoke, beautiful and terrible at once. Half divine, half venom, Darius murmured, just like the text said. Your blood carries both creation and destruction. I don't feel powerful. Mira's voice shook as the light faded. I feel like I'm breaking apart. Because you are. He moved closer, rolling up his sleeve to reveal his forearm. The dark veins had spread since she'd last seen them, crawling like black lightning beneath his pale skin. They pulsed with sickly light. And so am I. Mira stared at the corruption. How much time? 3 more full moons, maybe 4. His voice was matter of fact, but she heard the fear beneath. When it reaches my brain, I'll become exactly what humans have always feared. Mindless hunger with no control. And because I'm the oldest, the source, every vampire alive will follow. He paused, meeting her eyes. The curse doesn't just kill me. It ends our entire species. Then why haven't you tried everything to stop it? I have. Darius sat on the cold stone floor, suddenly looking ancient. For 300 years, I tried everything. Blood magic, witch curses, human science. Nothing worked. The curse is tied to the original sin, my ancestors' betrayal of the first peace treaty. Only blood that remembers both sides can break it. My blood. Your choice. He looked up at her. The prophecy says when red and gold meet without fear, but meeting without fear. That's the part no one can force. The silence stretched between them, heavy with impossible choices. Then teach me, Mira said finally, sitting beside him. If my blood can do what you saw, teach me how to control it. I can't make this choice if I don't understand what I am. Over the next days, Darius became her teacher. He showed her how to sense the energy in her veins without cutting herself, how to call the golden light to her fingertips through will alone, how to let the darker threads, the Valera poison, rise and fall without letting them consume her. It was like learning to breathe underwater. Impossible and necessary all at once. Again, Darius said on the second day, his voice patient despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Feel both sides, the Marcus peace and the Valera war. They're not enemies in your blood. They're partners. Mira closed her eyes, reaching inward. At first there was nothing. Then, there, a warmth that spread from her heart outward, golden and gentle. And beneath it, something cold and sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. When she opened her eyes, her hands glowed faintly with both colors swirling together. Good, Darius whispered, and something in his voice made her look up. He was smiling. Really smiling. And slowly, something shifted between them. She learned he wasn't the monster from stories. He was a king who'd carried the weight of 2 species for centuries, who went hungry rather than take more than he needed, who remembered the name of every soldier who died under his command. He learned she wasn't just a waitress or a weapon. She was stubborn, quick-witted, brave in ways that had nothing to do with bloodlines. She made him laugh for the first time in decades when she accidentally turned her blood bright pink during practice. "That's not supposed to happen," he'd said, staring at the glowing basin. "Maybe I'm special." She'd grinned, and he'd laughed, a real, genuine sound that echoed off the ancient walls. On the third night, Mira woke to find him sitting against the far wall, staring at his corrupted arm with hollow eyes. "I'm afraid," he admitted quietly. "For 300 years I haven't let myself feel fear. But with you," he paused, "I'm terrified, because for the first time, I have something to lose besides my kingdom." Mira crossed the chamber and sat beside him. Without thinking, she took his corrupted arm in her hands. The black veins pulsed against her palm, and she felt it. The wrongness, the spreading poison. But she didn't let go. "The prophecy says without fear," she whispered. "It doesn't say without being afraid. Maybe it means doing it anyway." Darius looked at her like she'd spoken in a language he'd forgotten. The moment hung between them, charged and fragile. It shattered when the shrine door burst open. General Theron stood there, bloodied and furious. "Sire, we have a problem." Darius was on his feet instantly. "What happened?" Theron's expression was grim. "The court convened 3 hours ago. They know the king has been hiding in the catacombs with a servant girl for 3 days. He paused. 17 noble houses are calling it an abomination. 8 more are demanding your abdication. Let them demand," Darius said coldly. "And the human kingdoms?" Theron continued, his jaw tight. "They're mobilizing for war. They think you've enslaved her. I haven't. It doesn't matter what's true." Theron cut him off, something he'd never done before. "Half your court believes you've been bewitched. The other half thinks you've gone mad with hunger. Princess Sarah has convinced the Northern Alliance that you violated the treaty by keeping a human prisoner." Mira's stomach dropped. "Sarah's still here?" "She's leading the rebellion." Theron looked at Mira with something that might have been pity. "She's united the noble houses against you both. Tomorrow at dawn they're coming for the girl, and if you stand in their way, they'll declare you unfit to rule and crown a new king." Darius's fangs extended, rage turning his eyes to burning coals. "Let them try. They have the backing of 40 houses, sire. You have 12 loyalists left." Theron's voice was steady. "This isn't a fight you can win with force." "Then what do you suggest?" The general looked between them, weighing his next words carefully. "Give her up, publicly. Claim she used blood magic to bewitch you. Execute her yourself before the court and prove your loyalty to vampire law." "No." Darius's answer was immediate and absolute. "Then you're choosing her over your kingdom. I'm choosing what's right over what's easy." Theron studied his king for a long moment, centuries of loyalty warring with pragmatism in his scarred face. "They won't accept this. Sarah has already drafted the declaration of your abdication. 23 houses have signed it. 23 out of how many total? 67. So I still have the majority. Barely. And it's slipping by the hour." Theron moved closer, his voice dropping. "Sire, I've served you for 200 years. I've never questioned your judgment. But if you walk into that throne room with her tomorrow, you're signing both your death warrants. Then we don't walk in defenseless." Darius turned to Mira. "Show him." Mira's heart raced. "I don't know if I can control it. You did yesterday. You can do it now." She took a shaky breath and held out her palm. Focusing inward, she called to the warmth in her blood. For a moment, nothing happened. Then golden light began to seep from her skin, not from a wound, but through her very pores. It swirled around her hand like living smoke. Theron stepped back, his hand instinctively going to his sword. "What is she?" "The answer to the prophecy," Darius said. "Shadow and gold, the bridge between our species, or the weapon that destroys us all." But Theron's eyes held something new. Not just fear, but wonder. "Does the court know she can do this?" "No. And they won't until tomorrow." Darius moved to stand beside Mira, and she felt the decision solidifying between them like steel. "Tell the court we're coming at dawn. We'll end this, one way or another." After Theron left, The weight of what they'd just committed to settled over the chamber like a shroud. "They're going to kill us both," Mira whispered. "Probably." Darius smiled, sad and determined. "But we're going to try to save them anyway. That's what heroes do in stories, right?" "We're not heroes. We're a cursed king and a confused waitress. Even better." She tried to smile, but it wavered. Darius reached out, his cold hand finding hers. Their fingers intertwined. Vampire and human, shadow and gold, poison and cure all mixed together. "Tomorrow, we face the court," he said quietly. "Tonight, we prepare." But as they stood in the ancient shrine built on hope 3 centuries ago, both knew the same truth. Preparation wouldn't be enough. The rebellion was already in motion. Sarah had spent 3 days turning the court against them while they hid away. They weren't walking into a trial tomorrow. They were walking into an execution. "Darius," Mira said softly, "if we don't survive this, we will. But if we don't, I need you to know." She paused, searching for words that felt too big and too fragile at once. "I'm not afraid anymore. Not of you. Not of what I am. Not of any of this." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his ancient eyes. "Shadow and gold meeting without fear," he murmured. "Maybe we've already fulfilled the prophecy." "Then why doesn't it feel like we've won?" "Because the hardest part isn't meeting without fear." His grip on her hand tightened. "It's surviving what comes after." Outside the shrine, the castle was stirring. Footsteps echoed through distant corridors. Voices rose and fell. The court was gathering, sharpening their arguments and their blades. Dawn was 6 hours away. And neither of them slept. They never made it to dawn. Mira woke to the sound of steel and shouting. Darius was already on his feet, fangs bared, as the shrine door exploded inward. Not knocked open. Exploded. Blown apart by magic that left stone shards embedded in the ancient walls. 12 vampires poured through the opening. Not guards. Nobles. She recognized several from the blood ceremony. Powerful, ancient, and furious. "Seize the human," Lord Cain commanded. "The king has broken covenant law. He must answer for his crimes." Darius moved like lightning, placing himself between Mira and the attackers. "Touch her, and I'll paint these walls with your blood. You've already forsaken your crown for a servant girl." Lady Seraphine stepped forward, her face twisted with disgust. 3 days hidden away like a lovesick boy while your kingdom burns. You're not fit to lead us. This is treason. This is survival. Lord Cain's voice cracked like a whip. You've endangered every vampire alive for one human. The treaty demands balance, not obsession, not love. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Before Darius could respond, more nobles flooded in. 20, 30. Too many to fight. And leading them, wearing a crown that wasn't hers, was Princess Sarah. "Hello, Your Majesty." Her smile was poison sweet. "I'm afraid your reign just ended." Everything happened at once. Half the nobles grabbed Darius, forcing him back with sheer numbers. Silver chains, burning, weakening, wrapped around his arms. He roared in fury, throwing off 3 vampires, but more kept coming. Mira tried to run, but cold hands seized her shoulders. She screamed, kicking and fighting, but they dragged her away from him. "Mira!" Darius's voice was raw with desperation. "Take them both to the throne room," Sarah ordered. "Let the court witness what happens to traitors." They were hauled through the castle corridors, past shocked servants and cheering rebels. The throne room doors loomed ahead, massive and terrible. When they swung open, Mira's heart sank. The entire court had gathered. Hundreds of vampires. Standing at the front, wearing expressions of righteous anger, were the remaining princesses and noble families who'd pledged against Darius. Mira was thrown to the marble floor at the base of the throne, the same throne Darius had sat on during the blood ceremony, the same floor where her blood had first fallen. Darius was forced to his knees 20 feet away, silver chains glowing against his skin, burning him. "Citizens of the Eternal Court," Sarah announced from beside the throne, her voice ringing clear. "For 300 years, King Darius has protected us. But power corrupts even the strongest. This human girl, this servant, has poisoned his mind. She's made him weak, reckless, unfit. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Lies, Darius snarled, struggling against his chains. She's done nothing but bewitch you. Sarah's laugh was cruel. The evidence is clear. You abandoned your duties, hid in the catacombs with her, chose her over your people. You violated the covenant and endangered our entire species for a waitress. She's more than that. She's human. Lord Cain stepped forward, pulling a silver dagger from his belt. Its edge gleamed wickedly in the torchlight. And humans cannot be trusted. This court demands proof of your loyalty, sire. Prove you're still our king. Kill the girl now! The crowd erupted in shouts, some demanding blood, others calling for mercy, chaos spreading like wildfire. Sarah raised her hand for silence. Or, she said sweetly, we can do it for you. She nodded to Lord Cain. No! Darius roared, throwing himself against the chains. I'll give you anything. The throne, my life, everything. Just let her go. But Cain was already moving toward Mira, silver blade raised. She scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to run. Vampires surrounded her on all sides, their eyes hungry and hateful. Please, she whispered. I never wanted any of this. Neither did we. Cain raised the dagger. But history demands sacrifice. The blade plunged down. Mira threw her hands up instinctively. The dagger caught her palm instead of her heart. Pain exploded through her as silver tore through flesh. She screamed. Blood poured from the wound. Not just red. Gold light erupted from the cut, brilliant and blinding. The blood splashed across the marble floor, and where it landed, both colors mixed, crimson and gold swirling together like liquid sunset. A single drop hit the base of the throne. The castle shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It was deeper, older. As if the very foundations of the obsidian castle were waking after centuries of sleep. The throne itself began to glow. Ancient symbols carved into the black glass pulsed with the same golden-red light as Mira's blood. Every vampire in the room staggered. The chains holding Darius shattered like glass. No, Sarah breathed, backing away. That's not possible. The throne doesn't respond to human blood, but it was responding. The light spread from the throne across the floor in intricate patterns. A map, or a spell written in a language older than any kingdom. Darius stood, the silver burns on his arms already healing. His eyes weren't crimson anymore. They glowed with the same mixed light as Mira's blood. She's not the weapon, he said, his voice resonating with power that made the room tremble. She's the key. Darius crossed to Mira in 3 strides, kneeling beside her as she cradled her bleeding hand. The wound was deep, the silver burning through her veins like acid. Her skin was turning pale, her breathing shallow. I understand now, he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. The prophecy never demanded consumption. It demanded unification. Darius, her voice was fading. Trust me. One more time. He bit his own wrist, dark red blood welling up instantly. Lord Cain stepped forward, his face horrified. The blood-merging ritual? That's forbidden. Ancient. Once performed, it can't be undone. What does it do? Mira gasped through the pain. Darius's eyes searched hers desperately. It makes us 1 life instead of 2. Your mortality, my immortality, shared equally. Half the court will call us abominations, but it's the only way to save you. And if it doesn't work, then we die together. Sarah's voice cut through the moment. Stop him. If he completes that ritual, everything changes. But Darius was already pressing his bleeding wrist to Mira's wounded palm. Where their blood met, his shadow red, hers gold bright. A light exploded that made every vampire in the throne room cry out. The ancient symbols on the floor blazed to life, spreading across the entire chamber. The throne pulsed like a beating heart, and Mira screamed as vampire venom mixed with hunter blood in a way that should have been impossible. Her body convulsed. The golden light in her blood fought against the darkness of his, 2 ancient enemies warring inside a single mortal form. Something's wrong, General Theron shouted over the chaos. The ritual isn't stabilizing. Darius held Mira tighter as her back arched, her eyes rolling back. Her bloodline is fighting it. The Valira hunter blood. It's rejecting the vampire transformation. Then she'll die. Alara pushed through the crowd, her face stricken. No one survives a failed merging. You've killed her. No. Darius's voice was steel. She's stronger than that. She's both of them, Marcus and Valira. Peace and war. She can survive this. But Mira's screams said otherwise. Her skin began to crack, light pouring from the fissures. Not just gold, but crimson too. And something else entirely. Something that had never existed before. Her body was trying to become vampire, but her hunter blood was fighting for humanity, and the collision was tearing her apart from the inside. Get her to the healing chamber. Darius lifted her in his arms, and even he looked shaken by how light she'd become, as if her body was burning away. Now! The court erupted into chaos as he ran. Some nobles tried to stop him. Theron and the loyalists formed a barrier, holding back the rebellion long enough for Darius to escape with Mira's dying form. For 3 nights, she hovered between worlds. They laid her in the ancient healing chamber beneath the throne room, on a stone altar that had been used for centuries to treat wounded vampires. But Mira was neither vampire nor human now. She was something caught in between, and the chamber didn't know how to heal her. Darius never left her side. He held her hand as her skin alternated between burning fever and deathly cold, as her heartbeat stuttered and raced, never finding a steady rhythm, as she screamed in her sleep, fighting invisible enemies that only she could see. The hunter blood is trying to purge the vampire venom, Alara explained on the second night, checking Mira's vitals with growing concern. But the venom is too deeply merged with yours now. If it succeeds, you'll both die. The merging linked your lives. Then what do we do? Darius's voice was hollow with exhaustion and fear. We wait, and hope that her body finds a third option. On the third night, Mira's eyes opened, but they weren't human eyes anymore. And they weren't vampire eyes either. They were both, gold and crimson swirled together, constantly shifting, never settling on one color. When she sat up, her movements were too fast for human, but not quite vampire speed either. Something in between. What? She looked at her hands. Her skin glowed faintly, as if lit from within. What happened to me? Darius helped her stand, and she swayed, adjusting to a body that no longer followed the rules it used to. You survived something that should have killed you. The blood merging created something new. Mira walked to the polished silver mirror on the wall. The woman looking back at her was familiar, but changed. Her skin held a luminescence that shifted between pale vampire and warm human. Her hair seemed to move even when still, catching light that shouldn't exist. I can feel it, she whispered. Both of them inside me. The hunger, the heartbeat, the cold, the warmth. All at once. She turned to Darius, and he saw it clearly. She was no longer the frightened waitress from the blood ceremony. She was something the world had never seen. A bridge between two species. And outside the healing chamber, the court was gathering again. This time not to demand her death, but to decide what to do with a creature that shouldn't exist. Mira discovered her first new ability by accident. She was standing near the window of the healing chamber when the first rays of dawn broke over the eastern mountains. Every vampire in the room hissed and retreated into shadows. Sunlight was death to their kind, but Mira didn't burn. The golden light touched her skin, and instead of pain, she felt warmth. The glow beneath her skin brightened, responding to the sun like a flower opening. She stepped fully into the beam, and gasps echoed through the chamber. Impossible, Alara breathed. No vampire can touch sunlight and survive. She's not vampire, Darius said quietly, watching from the shadows with something like awe in his eyes. Not fully. Not anymore. Mira turned her hand in the light, watching how it caught the gold in her blood. I can feel both. The sun doesn't hurt because part of me is still human, but I also feel the shadows calling. She stepped back into the darkness, and her form seemed to blur, becoming translucent for a moment. I can slip between them. She was a bridge, truly. A creature that could walk in both worlds without belonging completely to either. That day, Mira left the castle for the first time since the blood ceremony. Darius tried to stop her. The court still wants you dead. Sarah's rebellion hasn't ended. It's just waiting. Then they'll have to wait longer, Mira said, pulling on a simple cloak. I need to understand what I am. And I can't do that locked in a castle. At least take guards. No, both sides need to see me alone, unprotected, human and vampire at once. She walked out through the main gates as the sun climbed higher. The guards stared but didn't stop her. Word had spread about what she'd become, and fear kept them frozen. Her first stop was Vale Haven, the village where she'd worked at the tavern, the place she'd called home before everything changed. The villagers gathered when they saw her approaching, weapons drawn, faces hard with suspicion. She recognized several: the baker who'd sometimes given her day-old bread, the blacksmith whose forge she passed every morning, children she'd watched grow. Now they looked at her like she was a monster. "Stay back, demon!" the baker shouted, brandishing a pitchfork. "We know what you are, the Vampire King's whore." The words stung, but Mira didn't retreat. She pulled back her hood, letting them see her face clearly in the sunlight. "I'm Mira. I worked at the tavern. I grew up 3 streets from here. I'm still me." "You're one of them now," the blacksmith spat. "We saw the light from the castle, the unnatural glow. You've been turned." "I've been changed," Mira corrected gently. "But I can still do this." She held out her hand, letting her blood glow golden in the sunlight, the same light that would burn any full vampire. "I'm still human. Just also something else." An old woman pushed through the crowd. Mira recognized her, Mrs. Chen, who'd taught her to sew when she was small. "Child, what happened to you?" And Mira told them. Not everything, but enough. About the blood ceremony, about discovering her heritage, about the curse threatening to turn all vampires into mindless beasts, about choosing to merge her life with Darius's to survive. "Why should we care if vampires die?" someone shouted. "They're monsters. Because when they become mindless with hunger, who do you think they'll feed on first?" Mira met their eyes, one by one. The curse doesn't just end them. It ends the treaty. It ends peace. How many of your children will survive the war that follows? Silence fell over the crowd. "I'm not asking you to love them," Mira continued. "I'm asking you to see that we're all trapped in the same cycle of fear. They fear losing control. You fear being prey, and that fear is what keeps us all prisoners." She left Vale Haven with no promises, but she saw something shift in their eyes. Not trust. Not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Her next stop was a vampire sanctuary in the northern forests, a place where older vampires went to die when the curse began taking them. She slipped through shadows to reach it, her new abilities making travel instantaneous. The vampires there were wary, hostile. They saw her hybrid nature as an abomination. But Mira sat with them anyway. She listened to their stories. A warrior who'd fought in the Great War and regretted every kill. A scholar who'd spent centuries trying to find a cure for the curse. A mother who'd watched her children slowly lose their minds to the spreading darkness. "We didn't choose this existence," the mother said, her voice hollow with grief. "We were born into it, and now we're dying from it, one by one. The curse takes everything, our control, our memories, our humanity." Mira saw it then, clearly. Both sides were victims. Humans feared vampires because they killed. Vampires killed because they feared losing themselves to hunger. The cycle fed itself, generation after generation, and no one knew how to break it, except maybe her. What if there was another way? Mira asked quietly. What if fear didn't have to be the answer? The vampires looked at her with hollow eyes that had seen too much death. "Then show us," the scholar said, "because we've tried everything else." Mira returned to the castle as sunset painted the sky crimson and gold, colors that matched the blood flowing through her veins. Darius was waiting at the gates, and the relief on his face was almost painful to see. "I thought you weren't coming back." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "Both sides hate what I am. But that's exactly why I need to exist. She took his cold hand in her warm one. I understand now. The prophecy doesn't end with us merging. It ends with us showing them there's a choice. What choice? Between fear and trust. Between war and peace. Between darkness and light. Her eyes, gold and crimson swirling together, met his. We call them both. Tomorrow at dawn. In the valley below the castle. Every human within riding distance. Every vampire in your court. And we show them the truth. They'll kill us both. Maybe. Mira smiled. Or maybe we finally break the cycle. The valley below the obsidian castle had never held so many souls at once. On the eastern side, as the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, stood the humans. Hundreds of them. Farmers and blacksmiths, merchants and soldiers, mothers clutching children who'd never seen a vampire up close. They carried torches and weapons, their faces hard with generations of inherited fear. On the western side, still cloaked in pre-dawn shadow, stood the vampires. The entire eternal court had come. Nobles in silk and warriors in armor, the ancient and the newly turned. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, fangs visible, every muscle tensed for the fight they all expected. Between them, in the empty center of the valley, stood Mira and Darius. Alone, unprotected, visible to both sides. This is madness, General Theron had said hours earlier. Sarah's faction will attack the moment you're vulnerable. And the humans will assume it's a trap. Then let them assume, Mira had replied. Fear only wins if we keep hiding from it. Now, as the sky began to lighten, she felt that fear pressing in from both sides. A physical weight that made it hard to breathe. But she also felt Darius's hand in hers, cold and steady, anchoring her to the moment. People of the valley. Darius's voice rang out, amplified by vampire magic to reach every ear. 300 years ago, our ancestors signed a treaty written in blood and venom. They chose peace over endless war. But that peace was built on fear, not trust. And fear is a weak foundation. Murmurs rippled through both crowds. Weapons shifted. Eyes narrowed. Mira stepped forward, her voice strong despite her racing heart. My name is Mira. 4 days ago, I was a waitress serving wine at the blood ceremony. I didn't know I carried the bloodline of King Marcus, who signed the first treaty. I didn't know I descended from Kira Valera, the vampire hunter who nearly ended the war differently. Gasps erupted from both sides. A human voice shouted, Valera blood? The hunters were exterminated. They were hunted and hidden, Mira corrected. Just like the Marcus line was erased to protect it from political enemies. Both bloodlines survived in secret, carried by people like me who didn't know what we were. Until now. She raised her hand, letting her blood glow golden in the growing dawn light. Then she let the darker threads rise. The Valera poison that should burn any vampire who touched it. I am both peace and war. Human and vampire. The bridge that shouldn't exist. Princess Sarah pushed through the vampire crowd, her face twisted with rage. She's an abomination. The laws are clear. Hybrids must be destroyed. Then destroy me, Mira challenged. But first, let me show you why the curse exists. Darius stepped beside her, rolling up his sleeve to reveal the black veins crawling up his arm. Even from a distance, both humans and vampires could see the corruption spreading through him. 400 years ago, Darius said, his voice heavy with centuries of burden. My ancestors betrayed the original peace between our species. They killed human ambassadors under a flag of truce. That betrayal created a curse, one that slowly turns every vampire into the mindless monsters you fear most. The vampire court erupted in shouts. Many hadn't known the true extent of the curse's spread. 3 more full moons, Darius continued, and I will lose myself completely. When I fall, every vampire tied to my bloodline, which is all of you, will follow. You'll become exactly what the humans have always feared. Savage beasts with no control, no memory, no humanity left. The valley fell deathly silent. The prophecy said shadow and gold must meet without fear. Mira said softly. We thought it meant destroying one side or the other, but it doesn't. She looked at Darius, and then out at both crowds. It means choosing to trust despite every reason not to. She drew a knife from her belt, Not silver, just simple steel. Without hesitation, she cut her palm deeply. Golden red blood welled up, glowing in the dawn light. Darius did the same, his blood dark as shadow. They pressed their bleeding palms together, before hundreds of witnesses. Where their blood met, light exploded. Not the violent explosion from the throne room, but something gentler. A wave of crimson and gold that spread outward from their joined hands, rolling across the valley like a tide. It touched the humans first. They gasped, feeling warmth that carried no harm. Then it reached the vampires, and they cried out as the darkness in their blood responded. Darius fell to his knees, and Mira caught him. The black veins on his arm were receding, the curse pulling back like a tide going out. All across the vampire crowd, others collapsed, feeling the same release. "It's working," Alara's voice carried across the silence. "The merged blood is breaking the curse." But Mira felt it too. The cost. Darius was changing. His immortality was draining away, flowing into her and dispersing into the magic that was healing his people. He was becoming mortal, human, fragile. "Darius," she whispered, her heart breaking. He looked up at her, and his eyes, no longer crimson, now just brown and human, held no regret. "Worth it," he breathed. The light faded slowly, leaving the valley in the soft glow of true dawn. Both sides stood staring at each other across the empty space, weapons lowered, seeing each other clearly for perhaps the first time in centuries. "The curse is broken," Mira said, her voice shaking. "The treaty no longer needs to be written in blood and fear. But that doesn't mean peace comes easily. It means we have to choose it. Every day. Both sides." She helped Darius to his feet. He was weaker now, fully mortal, but alive. "The age of kings is ending," Darius said. "What comes next is up to all of you." For a long moment no one moved. The valley stood suspended in silence, humans on one side, vampires on the other, and in the center, a hybrid woman holding up a man who'd just given up 3 centuries of immortality to save both species. Then Princess Sarah laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. "You fool," she said, stepping forward. "You gave up everything. The throne, your power, your immortality. For what? A world that will never accept either of you?" Mira met her gaze steadily. "For a world that has a choice. That's more than anyone had yesterday. The curse is broken." General Theron's voice rang out from the vampire side. The scarred warrior knelt, pressing his fist to his chest in salute. "The king has freed us." One by one, other vampires knelt. Not all. Sarah and her faction remained standing, furious and defiant. But enough. More than half the court acknowledged what had been done. On the human side, old Mrs. Chen from Vale Haven stepped forward. Her weathered hands trembled as she approached the invisible line that had always separated the species. She looked at Mira, then at the kneeling vampires, then at Darius struggling to stand on mortal legs. "My grandson," she said quietly, "was killed by vampires during a blood raid 20 years ago. I have hated them every day since." She paused, tears streaming down her face. "But I am tired of hating. I am tired of being afraid." She crossed the line. The gasps from both sides were audible. But Mrs. Chen kept walking until she stood before Mira. "Show us how, child. Show us how to stop being afraid." That was the moment everything changed. Not all at once. Not easily. Sarah's rebellion didn't end that day. She and 24 noble houses fled north, refusing to accept the new order. Some human villages burned effigies and declared they'd never trust vampires. But slowly, carefully, others began to cross the line. A vampire scholar met with human historians to share knowledge. A human healer worked with a vampire physician to understand both physiologies. Farmers and vampire craftsmen traded goods without weapons drawn. And Mira and Darius became the living proof that the two worlds could coexist in one body, one life, one choice made every morning to trust instead of fear. Darius adjusted slowly to mortality. The first time he bled from a simple cut, and it didn't heal instantly, he stared at the wound with something like wonder. The first time he felt genuine hunger, not the vampire's burning thirst, but the simple human need for food. He laughed until tears ran down his face. "I'd forgotten," he said, eating bread that Mira had baked. "I'd forgotten what it felt like to need something that wouldn't hurt anyone to give." 3 months after the Valley Gathering, Darius formally abdicated the throne. General Theron refused to take it, saying the age of vampire kings had ended. Instead, a council formed. 12 vampires and 12 humans, with Mira serving as mediator when disputes arose. It wasn't perfect. There were attacks, betrayals, moments when it seemed the fragile peace would shatter like glass. But it held. 5 years later, Mira stood behind the bar of a tavern in Vale Haven, wiping down glasses as the evening crowd filtered in. The sign outside read, "The Golden Shadow," named for the 2 bloodlines that had created her. The tavern looked like any other, except for one detail. Half the patrons had no reflection in the mirrors behind the bar. At a corner table, a vampire merchant negotiated a trade agreement with a human supplier. Near the fireplace, a mixed group played cards. 2 humans, 3 vampires, and a heated argument about whether someone had cheated. At the bar, an elderly vampire told stories to a group of human children whose parents would have died of shock a decade ago. "Busy night," Darius said, emerging from the kitchen with fresh bread. His hair had more gray now, his face showing the lines of 5 mortal years. He moved slower, tired easier. But his smile was real in a way it never had been when he was king. "Mrs. Chen's bringing her whole family tonight," Mira said. "Anniversary of the Valley Gathering. She wants to celebrate." 5 years? Darius shook his head in wonder. "Feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." The door opened and a young woman entered hesitantly. Human, by her heartbeat. But her eyes held the same wariness Mira remembered from her own first days working in taverns. "We're hiring," Mira called out, recognizing that look. "If you need work." The girl's eyes widened. "You'd hire me? Even with them here?" She gestured nervously at the vampire patrons. "Everyone's welcome," Darius said gently. "As long as you don't mind serving all kinds." The girl hesitated, then nodded. I'd like to try," Mira smiled, remembering a blood ceremony that had changed everything. "Then let's start with the easy part. Refill the goblets. Don't make eye contact unless they speak first. And whatever you do, don't trip." The girl laughed nervously and headed toward a table where a vampire noble was waving for service. That night, as Mira and Darius closed up the tavern, they stood together in the doorway watching the mixed crowds disperse into the darkness, some to homes with sunlight, others to sanctuaries in shadow. "Do you ever regret it?" Mira asked quietly. "Giving up immortality? The throne? Everything you were?" Darius took her hand, his warm now, mortal, no longer cold, and squeezed gently. "I was dying for 300 years. You taught me how to live." Above them, the moon hung full and bright. Not blood red anymore, but silver, casting light that both species could walk beneath without fear. The age of kings was over. The age of choices had begun. And in a small tavern in Vale Haven, a former vampire king and a waitress who'd become a bridge proved every single night that the impossible was just another word for something that hadn't happened yet.